on this computer. Just because I'm
That's
curious.
perfect.
Yeah. All right. Let's get
Chuck,
that chat window
Alex,
cooking.
Lawrence. Are we to call you Lawrence now? I thought it was Larry. Am I wrong?
It's
It's
Larry.
good to see you either way.
Good to see.
Larry, yeah. That's what I thought. We're gonna, we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. Check this out. Boom. String wizards. Chris, Charlie, Catherine, Angelica, Lisa, who we can't see, Brian, Robin, BJ. What's up, BJ? It's been a while since Fiddle Camp. I remember when we could like go to Fiddle Camp all together in the same room. That was cool.
Those were the days.
Charmin, Margaret. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, this is the closest thing that we have to Fiddle Camp right now. So instead of sitting around wishing that we could be at Fiddle Camp, we're just making Fiddle Camp. We're looping. We want to get you looping. Yeah, so I think we're going to get started here. Well, I think we'll start. There's so this is all for you guys. I think I know most of you, but if anyone is just meeting me, hi, I'm Andy Reiner, and over there, pointed the other direction, is Rob Flax, and we've been
What's up?
We've been making these. Yeah, we're I guess we've been kind of. We think along very similar lines. We're not the same person exactly, but Rob and I see eye to eye on some musical topics. So we thought it would be more fun if we did it together. Rob, you sure have a lot of fan noise. Is it hot over in Boston today?
It is, but that fan noise is in fact the amp in the background now.
You might want to just mute yourself whenever you're not making noise otherwise.
All right, I'm gonna mute myself even when I am making noise. That's fair.
Yeah. So this is all for you guys. I'm pretty sure you know that we're doing this looping class. Many of you are signed up for it starting Monday. So we want to make sure that anyone who's coming to that has your gear and tech questions totally answered and that you feel really good. And otherwise, we also are just like inviting anyone who's not coming to the class to be here with us and to ask us tech questions. There is no question too stupid for today. We want you to we want to figure out what's confusing, because we have spent a lot of money and a lot of time figuring out buying the wrong stuff and then selling it and trying to buy the right stuff. And so we want to save you some time. So let's just figure out what. Here's all I have to say before we get going in terms of the gear stuff. You're only as strong as the weakest link in your signal chain. So if your cables are bad, it might make your sound bad. If you have a pedal that doesn't have power, you're not going to have sound.
Oh,
So
need that. Need power. Need good isolated power.
yeah. So if it is true, you do get what you pay for. So whatever you're sending from your instrument through a 1/4-inch cable, however that sound happens between your instrument and your ears is all really important. Every single gosh darn component. So we'll advocate for you spending lots of money on gear because we know that it's worth it. So let's just go. I think there's a reaction button. You can
I'll add to that. Buy
yeah.
cheap, buy twice.
Yes, exactly. That's the short version. So this is, for those of you who don't know, this is Zoom applause. So if you want to show your support for an idea, or you're like, that's cool, I want to agree with that, because there's a lot of people on mute, it really helps out the vibe if we can see Zoom applause. It makes us feel really good that that what we're saying or doing makes sense. Otherwise, it's kind of like, are we just crazy? Okay, yes, we're crazy, but like, do we make sense?
Yeah, we
So
knew
let's
that.
just go down.
We need
Yeah.
confirmation that we're
So
connecting our craziness with meaningful people.
I'm just gonna go with the first hand that I see, and you're gonna unmute yourself and ask us a question. We're just gonna go down. Beth, let's start with you. What's going on?
Hey, good. We're good here in Missoula. So I want to know the three things I think I'm working with. I actually have a tone bone, the radial, and I have the Ditto looper. I just got that to replace an
Cool.
old looper. And then for the octave pedal, I have a Morpheus, an old Morpheus. I don't think they make it anymore. Are those all three
Ooh.
acceptable? First of all,
Tell me about this Morpheus. I've never used one of those. I'm very excited.
I don't even think they make them anymore. And the only thing I've ever used it for is an octave, but it like you can change, like by half steps, which who wants to do that?
Can,
So
so any half step?
Whoa.
Okay. So one thing that comes to mind right
yeah,
away
yeah,
is the octave down for me. I'll take a moment to wax octave pedals. If you guys take a look here, I've never used the Morpheus, but I'm curious about which kind of octave pedal you would call it, right? There's, in my mind, two broad categories of octave pedals for my usage as an electric violinist looping, plugging my violin into pedals that will change my pitch and lower it down. I either want to sound like a cello or I want to sound like a bass of some kind. This is my two very broad categories, right? For me, I don't know if you can see this. Let me switch over to my full cam here. Pedal cam, is it this one? Yeah, so I have two different sub-octave pedals. I've got the Enzo doing cello duty and this U235 doing bass duty. And if you've never heard of either of these, that's probably fine and it's not the end of the world. This one is literally serial number 1 by some dude in Sweden. This one is a synth pedal disguising itself, so it's not something that people think of as an octave pedal, but I find it works really well for me for cello duties. So um, this one is monophonic and really is good at making a big, thick, low-end sound, right? This one is polyphonic, and so if I'm thinking about modern alternatives to this, my favorite octave pedals are either the Boss OC3 is a nice sort of thick monophonic low end 2 octaves down punchy full sound thing, or you can use the POG. The Electro-Harmonix POG is a great one. I love the sound of the micro synth. In other words, it's never going to sound like a convincing violin turned into a cello. It's just like a big, thick, low-endy kind of sound, yes? And so I don't know which one the Morpheus falls into, but in general, I like to either use 1 octave down, and it's fairly transparent. My favorite for this that's popular on the market is the Hx Pitchfork is really good at tracking evenly. A lot of people use the Pitchfork. I use the Enzo for that purpose. I could use the Zoya as well, but for me, Enzo is filling that job. So that's my
So
that's my 2 cents
yeah,
on octaves.
I'm gonna jump in here. I did look up the Morpheus pedal that you have.
yeah.
It is a polyphonic one, and one of the big differences between this polyphonic and monophonic situation is just that, like, in a monophonic, it's gonna work much better if you only play one note at a time, whereas the polyphonic octave pedals are gonna allow you to play 2 notes at a time, which for me, when I want to put one finger down and get that big cello power chord, I have the Electro-Harmonix POG and the Pitchfork, and I find it's better to not be avoiding a certain thing that
Right.
my left hand has to do. So the thing that you have and seems to have be able to drop you down a full octave and also blend your original note in the octave note. So that's kind of a nice way to get like a little here. Like here's the difference with my Pog. There's just an octave down.
Yeah.
And here with a little bit more dry signal. So I find that blending it gets you kind of a nice cello-y, I mean, it doesn't sound like a cello exactly, but yeah. So that'll work great. We were very glad for your gear choices.
And I just want to chain them together. What order?
Oh, good question.
Yes. Okay, so effects loop. You have the radial tone bone preamp, which has an effects loop. So there's a thing that has a loop, and it says send, and then it says return. So what that does is basically, and I'm hoping that some of your questions are the same. So I'm hoping that by answering this, we might actually help some other people with some of the same questions. But this particular pedal with an effects loop is going to make, like, you could send it all like fiddle, pedal, 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 amp, and that would be okay. But what an effects loop does is it kind of conditions the sound to make it more stable and work better together. So what you actually want to do, Beth, is take a cable and plug it into your effects send. Like you would plug your instrument into the tone bone into the input, but then your effects are going to go, you're going to send it out to your octave pedal and then to your looping pedal and then come in to return with another cable, and it'll sound even better. Oh yeah. And if that doesn't make sense, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Once you do, it's like a circle. You just got to complete this. It is. It's a loop.
Oddly confusing to be talking about a loop in the context of a looping masterclass, and it's a different kind of loop.
Yeah, that's what I just realized.
Yeah,
it's
but
like
it's still real.
Right.
Our loopers are in a loop. There's more than one loop. Okay, next hand. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
This is all about reaching your hand up and get Austin. I see you. Oh, and I should make sure that I see the second page. Carly, you're next.
Okay. I was just wondering. I have this one which I've used for a really long time and I love. I'm wondering if there's any way I can get this, which only has a 1/4 inch input. How I can get a microphone.
I got this one.
Compatible.
Yes, you can absolutely.
Oh, cool. How do I do that? Do I just need one of the things that changes a 1/4 inch to a?
You
or an XLR
can do that, but it's going to cause some problems. So first and foremost, microphones and guitar-like objects. I'm going to use that phrase, guitar-like objects, because those things are things that use 1/4 inch cables. Yes, you know what that is. I'm just going to hold this up for the benefit of everybody here. 1/4 inch cables. Da 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 da. This kind of connector. This is the standard guitar cable, or electric violin cable, if you will, right? XLR cables are the 3-pronged ones that you use in a microphone. How do you plug in something like this, which is 3-pronged, into that? You could just buy an adapter that will terminate, the 3-prong thing and then plug it in, and that's what Austin is talking about. I think this is a useful thing, but you may run into issues with impedance. And so that means that there's a low Z and a high Z thing, depending on I don't understand the physics of what impedance means. You may end up with a weird noise floor issue potentially, unless you get one that has a little transformer. Now, before you buy that, my recommendation is something fundamentally more complicated, which is, if you're planning on looping your vocals and a violin, or potentially even more things than that, you're going to be faced with the challenge of, how do I get them all in at the same time? Maybe I want to sing and play at the same time. Maybe I want to loop 2 things at once. So what I have done, and what Andy is holding up, is the exact same solution that I've chosen, which is a small mixing board, right? So if you take a look down here on the floor, I'm going to make my DSLR bigger now. You can see this thing over here. That this is a digital mixing board, and so it lets me plug in a bunch of different items into it. This has got a microphone, there's a violin, there's this whole other board, there's a synthesizer up here. I've got 6 or 7 things all plugged in, and I don't have to choose. I can balance them all in the mixer, and the mixer just has a 1/4-inch guitar-like output. Some of them it'll be labeled the main out, some of them it might be an aux send, depending on how the mixer is configured. But if you can get a guitar-shaped output going into your pedal board from a mixing board, that solves all the problems most of the time. There's sometimes noise floor and other issues. You still will have to deal with the issues of feedback. That mic is right on the edge of feeding back because it's close enough to the amplifier. So we got to talk about feedback issues when we get into our class on Monday. But in general, a mixing board would be the best solution in terms of looping your vocals and an instrument. Yes? Good?
Yeah, great. I have that. Thank you. I'll set that up now. Try to figure it out.
Sweet. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Go for it, Andy.
Yeah. Well, I just want to keep it rolling. I saw Charlie's hand earlier, and I see his question appeared in the chat. It's how do you like the Tone Dexter?
I love it. It sounds really good. If I could have this going to the direct output that I was trying to set up for tonight, you would hear a much more unbiased version of it. Right now, you could hear it through the guitar amp, and I will play it for you as best you can hear it. Okay, so here I go. Right now, that is the sound of my violin in the mic here, plus the sound of the amp from far away, with the pickup not doing the Tone Dexter thing. I'm going to make it as loud as I possibly can and turn my physical fiddle away from this mic so you can hear the sound of the amp as best you can. The amp part sounds not quite the same as the acoustic instrument. Oh, I'm sorry. Now it's just the sound of the pickup. Pretty dramatic difference between the effect bypassed and the effect on. Bypassed. So it makes a pretty good, considerable difference in tone. I leave it bypassed a lot because this octave pedal tracks better if it's getting a signal from just the pickup with all the low end information, and it's not getting that if I have this effect on. Check out this bass-like sound, by the way. Bass, cello. Right? Polyphonic cello fun, super fat evil synth. I love that. I love that. So that's why I have two dedicated different octave pedals for doing two different jobs, just to get on that more now that it's amplified and you can hear it. But in general, I think the Tone Dexter is very, very useful. Right now, I'm bypassing it most of the time, but I'm still using the boost on it. There's a boost on it. So that's useful. It does have a notch filter that I can remove some feedback if there's a specific frequency giving me problem on a live stage. Pretty much every time I've used it live, it sounds great. I've recorded with it in a room where there were drums, and we used that as the DI out, and it sounded pretty good. I would give it 8.5 out of 10.
Nice. Okay.
Thanks for that. That wasn't really my question, though.
Oh.
What was your question?
Oh, well, I wanted to actually talk about the loop pedals themselves. I have a series of ditto pedals, and what I have a problem finding is, well, when I use them, they don't sync real well. So, you know, each multiple loop doesn't just fall in where it should. They make one now that's called an X2 Jam or something like that, that has an external mic that you can put on if you're in a band situation. You can hook it to a drum, and then it picks up that in the room, and it all syncs with the rhythm instrument.
That sounds
and I'm
terrifying.
just wondering if anybody's used that with, like, say, I don't know, a subwoofer or something in the room, if that would work.
I'm immediately skeptical, but in theory, it's possible. What is it doing to sync to a live drummer? I mean, if the drummer is out of time, then you're toast anyway.
Right.
Right. So.
There's an assumption made there for sure.
Right. I think that's.
It sounds like Chris Payne seems to be able to answer this question. I want to let him unmute and respond to that.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. So I have that very one. I haven't used it that much, but it's kind of quirky. I've even tried doing like a direct in from a drum machine. So it's got several things. First of all, it can listen to you as you're practicing, so it can kind of change speed as you're practicing or something. That's one function of it. And then the other thing is you can either have a microphone that it picks up the beat from, or you can do a direct in. And it's so far, I mean, I haven't played out with it. It's kind of unreliable. What I'm trying to do is MIDI clock, but I've yet to find. I've got a looper that has MIDI clock out, which is an old Echoplex, which is very big and heavy to carry around. But that does MIDI sync out. But I believe there are some with MIDI sync in. There's, I think, one of the other Ditto ones has a MIDI sync in. Maybe I was going to ask that if anyone else knows of something with MIDI sync in.
Yes, I've got a few options on that front. Two of them here, actually three of them here in this room with me. So I will point you in the direction of my pedals here. Oops, not that one, this one. So the first option is the Boomerang. Now the Boomerang has a MIDI input on the back there. It is only MIDI sync. It's not going to give you the full, it won't send MIDI out, but it does technically link up to MIDI. And I've tried to use it as such and found it's not always that reliable, which is unfortunate, but that's okay. The other option is the Empress Zoya. It has a looper module. You could learn to program it. It's wildly complicated and unnecessarily detailed, but it's definitely configurable and does take MIDI in and out. The third option is, if you zoom back here, it is the Chase Bliss Blooper, which has a MIDI sync input, and that can sync to a MIDI clock. But it's also complicated and has its own set of challenges. If you just want a looper that does just looping and syncs to a MIDI clock, there's not that many good options, but one to check out that's recently come out, and I've tried and I've played, and it actually is pretty nice, is the Eros looper from Singular Sound. I don't think the build quality is quite as good as the Boomerang. It's much sturdier, but the Eros does have, it's pretty much designed to sync with their Beat Buddy pedal, so it definitely takes something that'll send it a regular clock. Their pedal specifically is made for that. I'm not a huge fan of the Beat Buddy's beats for everything, even though they're like, it's great beats. I'm like, I want to make my own. I'd like to have clocks so I can send any samples. But check out the Eros looper. That's one. There are a few others, and we'll have a more detailed list available for you come Monday. But I'm curious about this always. Anybody else have other MIDI clock ones? Chime in.
So I just want to say, like, so there's new technology with this kind of stuff coming out all the time, and what we're kind of advocating for is that you make your time better by being able to, without any kind of external other things coming in to help you, like the Boss loopers with drum machines, like whatever. We're talking about creating from scratch using your instrument and your voice, something that you can perform live and practice with. So
That's
while it's
exactly
true,
right.
there's a lot of other things. What we're going to go in depth about that we're most interested in is this. And if you list, like Casey Dreesen, I think is a great example of someone who makes everything come from scratch and does unbelievable stuff. So
That's right.
we're going to keep it rolling here. Marco Gibson has an interesting question. I'm not totally sure if I understand it. So maybe you can unmute yourself and ask it yourself, so we can hear you. Is she there?
I'm here.
Oh, here you are.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I don't know what I'm asking because I don't own anything. So I guess my real question is, what is the very beginner starter setup, right?
Great.
Not going cheap, with, kind of a balance of quality and simplicity.
Love it. Okay. Andy, you want me to take this one? Can I take this one?
Go for it.
Okay. So the first big question is you need a looper pedal of some kind. That's the thing that we want people to end up with, is a basic looper pedal, right? The ones that are on Andy's website are really good recommendations. probably the simplest one and best value for your money if you just want a one-channel, simple looper with all the basic commands that'll teach you how to use the whole family of loopers and is very useful, and the sound quality is good, and it has a high resale value if you ever want to upgrade to a bigger thing, is the Ditto X2. That is a really good choice. The MXR clone looper Andy has and has used, it has a couple more features. Yeah, there's Robin's holding up one right there. Very simple interface, very simple controls. We're just focusing on the fundamentals of looping, right? And practicing looping as a practice. So I'd recommend that one. Now you'll notice, thank you, can you keep holding up the ports on the back there, Robin? So if you look on Robin's screen, you'll see there are holes for this kind of plug, this 1/4-inch guitar-like object, right? So your violin, as you'll notice, does not have any holes like that. There's no cable, right? So you have to step two, the thing you need is some way to get the violin into that device, right? The way that
what
I
do you
got
mean,
it,
Rob?
I do.
It has the port?
Yeah, I do have a realist. So
okay, pickup.
Oh,
Check.
okay. So
right,
you
we're
have
just
a
going
pickup.
to super basics.
Yeah.
Pickup going into that pedal directly will work. However, depending on the kind of pickup, you may want to do some tone sculpting before it gets in there, right? So this is where a preamp of some kind is useful, right? If you look on my floor here, the Tone Dexter is serving that job for me, but I also have this Chase Bliss Condor. There's also some EQing on the mixer. There's also the Zoya. I'm just sculpting my tone the whole way in to make the pickup sound as good as I can, right? And then eventually it hits my looper. You can do this with one device pretty straightforwardly. I've just acquired so many over the years that I'm stacking them and using them together. But you don't need that many preamps. You really should have a preamp of some kind. And Andy uses the radial tone bone. This Tone Dexter is great. The Boss Para DI is great. The Venue DI. All of those things that just correct for impedance, maybe give you a little bit of EQ control, something to make the violin sound more like an acoustic instrument if that's the sound you're going for. Make sense?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then something to play back the sound at the other end of the looper. So an amp to plug into, and that's with just that, you're good to go. That's all you need. If you'd like to expand beyond that, you could add some effects. As I've mentioned in copious detail, I love things that drop my violin down an octave, but that's because I play a treble instrument with only 4 strings, so I'd like to play low, right? If you want to add a vocal mic and you want to loop your vocals, then the mixer trick will help, and so on. In fact, if you want to loop your vocals, a mixing board could serve as the preamp for your pickup as well. So that's often a very straightforward setup. Violin, pickup, into mixer or preamp, into maybe octave pedal, into looper, out to the amp. Boom. Yes? Andy, do you agree with that assessment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense, Marka?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. All right. And you can always spice it up from there, right? As you can see, I am a pedal junkie. I love pedals that will give me more exciting flavors of stuff to loop. But that's extra, and that's only because I've already exhausted that basic setup, and I've been doing this for years now, and I know I'd like more flavors to cook with in my kitchen, right? But they're flavors, they're spices, right?
Yeah.
This delay pedal is my favorite thing to cook with. I just love the sound of echoes, right? You might also really love reverb. Right? But that's a flavor, right? You don't need that for looping. You don't need that to practice the things we're talking about using a looper pedal to grow at. They are really nice to sweeten it a little bit. I do think that reverb is one of those things that you might want to have something to give a sense of space. If you're an acoustic violinist, you're used to playing an instrument that makes air move in a space. So sometimes when people plug into a pedal board and it's the direct sound of their instrument, it feels a little close. It's like you're right next to the instrument and you're hearing the very, very close-up sound, which may or may not be as flattering. A little bit of reverb goes a long way just to give it the sense of being in a space. Yeah?
Yeah. So
you can get that a bunch of different ways.
Just to sum that up too, and to answer someone's question that was very related in the chat is, should I get a preamp? this is what a long time ago I asked Casey Dreesen, because he showed up off a plane with 2 pedal boards, and he's like had each checked in a suitcase, and I was like, where do I start? What do I do? How do you get, like, how do I become you? And he said, buy one thing at a time in order of importance. So yes, it's true. You may want the entire world, but it's also true that you should buy what's most important. So, like, you know, pickup, cables, looper, amp. You know, that's what's most important. And then from there, it's like, do I want an octave pedal? Is that most important? Do I want my preamp to make my pickup sound better? You know, what's most important to you is how much money do you want to spend on gear? That's kind of the question. And so we kind of acquire gear one piece at a time. And it looks like we have all this stuff, but that's because we've been buying one piece of gear one at a time for longer than we should have.
Yes, I see Ross's hand up.
Oh, you're muted.
You're still
Unmute
muted.
Yourself. There you go.
I saw some other hands too. I'm sorry if I'm jumping out of order.
Thank you, Andy. You got my question. Do you think so? I have a Jamman looper pedal and an amp and cables. It seems like you're saying, and I occasionally play with some friends at the bar. It sounds like maybe a preamp would be a next good thing to get, and not some of the crazy effects pedals.
It's really good. It makes your pickup sound like probably 10 times better. But depending on what kind of preamp you get, it might have other useful features, such as mute, such as EQ.
A tuner.
A tuner, like a boost. So, like, you know, there's preamps that'll give you more than just massaging the sound of your signal. So, like, if you're talking about being in a bar and you don't have a mute button, like, oh, God help you, you know?
I've been I turn my volume down when I need to. Remind me a couple of the good names of preamps you rattled off there?
The 2 that are on my board right now are Fancy and Delicious. The Audio Sprockets Tone Dexter works very well and does a lot of very fancy stuff. Mm-hmm. Andy has typed in the chat the Tone Bone PZ Pre. Charlie has typed in the chat the Grace Felix or Alex, which are both really great. There is the Headway EDM and EDB series of stuff. Andy has mentioned the Tech 21 Fly Rigs. There's the LR Bags Venue DI is very useful and popular. The Para DI preceded that. I think the Venue's fancier. Fishman has one that's they've put out that's okay, right? For all of these, I would do some research and see which people are using the ones, like who's using ones that you like, or what are the people that you like using is maybe a more interesting question.
Yeah, totally.
Well, that's easy. What's Andy using?
He's using the Radial Tone Bone.
Well, but I'm doing something kind of similar to Rob, though, because I'm not only using the Tone Bone, I use my Tech 21 Fly Rig 5 to simulate the sound of a tube amp. They have all analog technology that simulates the sound of a tube amp, because like one of those things is not the sound I want. Like, I have found the sound that I want by combining both of them. So that's what we mean by time and money and experimentation.
And I think that's actually a reassuring thing, right? Is because if you get one preamp and it's better than it was, but it's still not quite there yet, you can stack things and grow as you try out more gear. I mean, but seriously, we could just talk about the things we've bought and tried over and over again and have a great time with that. Great. Andy, are you monitoring whose hands have been up? Because I'm not. But I've seen.
I'm doing a very bad job because I'm also trying to answer questions in the chat.
Oh, okay. Robin, you had your hand up before, yes?
Yeah.
And then Chuck has his up next. Robin, you're muted still. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I had an earlier question that actually went with the mic question, so I was trying to chime in at that point.
Sure.
But I have both the Ditto 2 and the Ditto that for the mic. And so...
Oh, there's a Ditto that has a mic input dedicated, a vocalist's Ditto. Oh.
So it literally the mic hooks in, and then there's a cord that goes to the, oh, help me with the sound. See, I'm new to
Output,
this.
the amp. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, I don't know that I can use the two of them together. Has anybody tried?
right.
It will drift.
Okay. So, yeah. So there's two problems right away, right? One of them is the number of inputs and outputs on each device, right? So the vocal one has one input, the microphone cable input, and one output, yes? And that you can send signal on to something else. The Ditto X2, how many inputs does it have? Does it have a left and right input for two plugs? Or, okay, so we could plug it in and get that into your Ditto as well. Yes. You could send the output from the first pedal into one of the two inputs of the second one, and then plug the violin into the other input of the second one. In other words, the Ditto X2 now, that's not the mic input, is receiving two instruments. You have essentially used the Ditto mic version as a microphone preamp to get the mic into your Ditto. Now, if you want to try and use the looper function on it as well as the looper function on the second one, you can, but they're not synchronized. And so now you get into the issue of if you try and play one loop and have it be even just a little bit off. I don't know if you've ever listened to two things that are at 60 beats and 61 beats per minute. Those metronomes are going to drift and it becomes really obvious really fast. I have tried this out, and there is a way on my board to loop things in one looper and send that into a second looper. However, if those are related to groove or time, they will drift and it will be a hot mess.
Well, this is what I'm thinking, because as you guys know, I'm a bones player, I play spoons, I play percussion type things. And so I wanted to be able to microphone those in and then be able to play on top of that, if that makes sense. And so even if they're two separate loops, like I record on this one and then only use it for a little while and then turn it off, whatever. I don't know if that's doable, but that's what I was thinking, because there's no way to put a there's no way to mic the bones.
You can do it. It's possible. Here, I'm going to try and do something like what you're saying here, right? Let me go to my pedal cam here, and I'm going to show you what I'm doing. Okay, pedal cam. Nope, not. I need DSLR on it. There we go. Okay, so this has a looper on it, and this has a looper on it. So I'm going to loop something right now. Okay, so now that's looping in here. The sound is coming through the boomerang, but I'm not looping anything. Now, if I want to try and record another loop here, and I go... Do you hear what's happening?
Yes.
This one's still playing. So this looper recorded both my violin and any other sound that it was getting to it. So the thing that was coming to it was this loop. So in other words, this one is just that now, and this one has both. But if I have both playing at the same time, it becomes like a canon, but a really out of time canon. It's kind of a mess. Yeah.
So all I have to do is record the original and then record it into the new one to make the loop.
You can do one step simpler. You can do one step simpler. You don't even have to use the original, because the sound is passing from the mic to the output even without you using this first pedal. So
I'm going to do all my actual recording on the Ditto too.
Just on this one. And the other pedal, even though you have the ability to loop here, you don't have to. Just use the looper that is last in the chain for all of the looping, and it will stay in sync.
Okay, perfect. And then,
or if you want to get weird, you can and use them both. But it's a whole. I mean, you're getting into like Robert Fripp territory. That's a whole thing people do, but maybe not for the purposes you're looking for.
If you want more separate loops, we recommend a looping pedal that has the ability to mix more separate loops rather than combining separate looping pedals together.
Yeah, I just wanted to be able to do all my percussion things that I can't put, something on, like my bones.
But it's a yeah. So what just going back to what Rob said earlier, that is a great mic preamp for your to get that signal into your other looping pedal and into the world.
Perfect.
So that it's actually kind of an elegant solution.
Okay, excellent. And then just one more quick question. I went ahead and bought that chorus pedal that you recommended.
The deep organ? Did you buy it?
No, I don't know if it's called the deep organ.
The CE2? I recommended like 6
tomorrow.
of them.
It's arriving tomorrow.
Oh, very exciting. I love chorus pedals. I just switched one out on my board. Yeah.
Where does it go next? Like, does it go after this or before this?
Depends on what you want it to do. Do you want to take the bones and give them chorus?
I don't need it to now.
Okay. So you could put it instead. I would go your mic ditto, which is essentially, I'm just calling it the silly preamp, is what I'm going to call that one.
Yeah, just call it a preamp.
Silly preamp, chorus pedal. Actually, you could go violin into chorus pedal, and because you only want to use the chorus on the violin, right? You don't want to use it on the bones, probably. If you do, you can always rearrange it so that the bones is hitting that too, right?
Okay.
So violin into chorus pedal into the Ditto X2's output, right? So it's now part of your violin chain, yeah?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good way to do it.
I'll try that first, and then if not, I'll switch it to the front.
And honestly, try it mixing around and try them in different orders. This is always the best practice, is just see what happens. Yeah. If you haven't tried a chorus pedal on bones, why not? Maybe it sounds cool, right? But just, you're not going to blow things up by plugging them in different orders. You might as well see what happens. Sometimes the unconventional order is
interesting. And then you'll find out why one is better than the other. You will find out when you do it.
Right.
Okay, perfect. I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah. Chuck, you had a question earlier.
I still have a question.
Nice.
Part of the question is regarding separate preamps. If I've got a Mackie soundboard, mixer that has preamps and stuff in it, and it's got a sound stuff. Is there any reason to get other separate discrete preamps for anything?
Do you like the sound of the Mackie?
So far.
Then no. Use the Mackie. Use the Mackie. That's the end of discussion. I mean,
if it sounds good, it is good.
That's right. Duke Ellington said that. If it sounds good, it is good. I think, for years, that was enough tools for me, right? Because on a mixing board, you'll sometimes will even have the 3-band EQ, and you can really dial in the sound of your fiddle just in that channel, and it sounds pretty okay, right? Does it have built-in reverb or effects too? No. Okay. So if you want reverb, then you get a reverb. If you want delay, you get a delay. But the mixer itself is doing the preamp duties, yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like it solves a lot of the problems regarding microphones and mixing stuff with your fiddle and that stuff.
I see Terry is holding up a Soundcraft. Is that a Yamaha or a Soundcraft? That's a Soundcraft, right?
The other end of the question, though, is if I want to go into a computer, like if I wanted to use that and go into Zoom, rather than having something like a direct to USB microphone, is there a way to get like the output of the preamp into the computer?
Yes. And in theory, I was supposed to have that sorted out this evening, but I failed. In general, it's the same as any time you're getting signal into your computer, right? You need something that does analog to digital conversion of some kind, right? Sound is waves, it's electromagnetism in the microphone format. To get it into the computer, something has to turn it into ones and zeros. Yes?
Yep.
So I'm using the RME Babyface as my little interface here. And I've got a bunch of stuff plugged into the Babyface. In theory, this whole pedal board is going into the Babyface. In practice, I messed up and couldn't quite get Zoom to recognize this audio interface for the Zoom call. I believe there's another missing puzzle piece that I have to sort out there, right? But so in the meantime, you're just hearing the sound in the room. But yes, depending on the Mackie, I know that some mixers even have a USB interface built into them. You can buy mixing boards that are interfaces, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
Like they do the conversion for you. Does yours have that, Chuck? No. Okay. So you'll need something to take the output of that mixing board, and it's an interface is going to be useful if you're plugging in mics directly, if you're plugging in violin directly, if you want to record some other vocal thing, you can do that as well. Cheapest ones are like the Focusrite Scarletts are pretty good. Universal Audio's little tiny one is very, very powerful, a little pricier. I love RME's stuff. Yeah.
Rob and I love the RME stuff. It's a little more expensive, but we also recommend highly using a company called Sweetwater. Rob and I haven't talked about this, but Sweetwater has amazing customer service, and like for any internet sales company, they really want to know how to get the thing that you need on your budget and make sure that all of the gear that you're buying works together. So they'll give you a sales engineer, and it's not like hogwash. It's true. The other Sarah Gorak is typing electric violin shop is also a great place, but they have more electric violin specified stuff versus Sweetwater, which has everything ever music. So I would buy my interfaces from Sweetwater, and I would personally buy violin pickups and that kind of stuff from the electric violin shop.
Agreed.
And they send you
1,000%.
candy. Okay, moving along. Alice.
Okay, hi. So I have Jammin, and I don't know. Like I've fiddled with it a little. Not intended with the pun. But I messed with it a little. And I figured out how to do bass.
Oh, I'm sorry, I lost what you were saying. The sound cut away.
Oh.
Can
Your
everybody
sound
who's
is-
not Alice mute your mics for a second, please, just in case? Oh no, Alice,
we need you. Alice, we need you to re-ask the second half of that question.
Yeah. Oh, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay. Well, just the whole question is, what else can I do with this?
We missed the first half as well.
So there's an endless, never-ending list of possibilities of different pedals that you can buy to get different sounds, and you can buy them individually. But if you're not sure what sounds you want, I think the best thing to do would be to buy one thing that has many sounds on it. Personally, I just got this Boss ME80 because it was a backup to everything that I already bought separately. I realized that Chris Howes was playing with this pedal, and it did every sound that I had bought separately for $200 on my pedal board. So I figured it would be a good backup. And this is a great way a multi-effect unit is a really great way to explore sounds without committing to each sound costing $200 each.
Right. Yeah. You could also watch some videos if you're looking for different kinds of sound. Start to explore the world of YouTube that has a bunch of pedal demos, so you could see what does a chorus pedal do, what's a phaser, what's a flanger. Do I like these sounds? I'm a huge fan of the YouTube channel just called That Pedal Show. Right? These two guys, Dan and Mick, are guitarists who will do long, rambling explorations of very specific details about pedals. And I've watched for years and basically got a college degree in pedals just watching all of their stuff. So I would recommend poking around there and seeing what their videos are. I have posted a few videos on my YouTube channel demoing some effects chorus pedal. I did a video on the heavy metal violin pedal, which is kind of bizarre. But I'm also going to show some of the effects that I like to use, and you can see what they are and what they do. Really quickly, I guess I could just do some of that right now. Here's my violin. Oops. Wrong camera. Here's my violin. Here's a cello sound, octaver. Here's a bass. Here's some overdrive. that sound of overdrive is very much sort of electric guitarish. This is a delay pedal. There's a beautiful echo. This is a chorus pedal. It's more subtly set right now, but it gives it a little bit of a wiggly sound. There's phasers and flangers and other things, but and this is a reverb pedal. It will. So
good old cave.
That's a nice sound, and I like that. So if you like any of those things, you could explore those as search categories: reverb, delay, chorus, overdrive, and sub-octave are all good categories for that. Yeah.
I want to make sure that we're fair to the people who want to ask questions. So I'm actually going to now ask that anyone who wants to ask a question send me a message, and we're going to start a line. Yeah. Okay. First person to send me a message gets to ask the next question.
Yeah. And while that's happening, I'll loop something.
Who's got the fast fingers? All right, cool. Getting into these questions. We're going to go into lightning round because time keeps ticking forward. Elizabeth is asking, I want to know where or who can put together a pedal board for me. I also want to know what effects pedal should be first other than octave. So who can put together a pedal board? That's a big question because it depends on how many pedals do you have, how big are they, because some pedals are really big and some pedals are really small. There's kind of no end to the limit of what I would do is I would only buy a pedal board when you decide that you have settled upon a group of pedals that you want to carry around physically connected to each other. And until then, put them on the floor and move them around until you're happy. Once you're happy, then you can measure how much space that takes up, put Velcro on it, and we can talk about what kind of pedal board you want. But until then, the floor and experimentation is kind of situation.
Absolutely.
What other effect pedals should be first other than octave? Personally, I put a wah pedal before my octave so that I can get these incredibly necessary sounds, which don't quite work as much in the other order, but the only way that I found that out is by playing around with the order.
Right. Another good one is fuzz. This is a fuzz pedal. Fuzz tends to do better early in the signal chain. I would put that early. You could experiment and decide octave and fuzz or fuzz then octave. Depending on the pedals, one order will sound better than the other, but it's hard to say from, yeah.
Okay, next. Richard is asking, what was my multi-effect board? The one that I held up is the Boss ME80. It's kind of like it's basically a Boss pedal library, and it's only $300 compared to each pedal individually costing $150. It's a nice way to experiment. The other thing that I have for multi-effects that I just cannot play without is the Flyrig 21 because it combines delay with tap tempo, analog, amp simulation, EQ, boost, and my favorite distortion sounds in the world. I just love the sound of it. You know, Rob is into the fuzz. I'm into the metal, but you know that's where your mileage may vary. But the ME80 is kind of cool because it's got fuzz and more serious kind of distortion. Okay.
Yeah, I will quick throw a shout out to one other small device that is worth potentially buying as well. I do not own this, but I know a lot of violinists and cellists who like this a lot, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. The Line 6 Hx Stomp. This is a thing that is a multi-effects unit that's pretty small. You can plug in, I think, a mic into it. It does things called impulse responses that are kind of similar to the way that the Tone Dexter works. You can use IRs with it. That's a whole world that I barely understand, but you can rearrange little signal chains inside a virtual pedal board inside the Hx Stomp. That's another multi-effects unit that is wildly configurable and fairly complicated and more expensive than the ME80. So it's up to you to decide how deep you want to go diving and to figure out what's the next sound for me. My take has always been, if you like the sound of one effect, buy a pedal that just does that one thing. I have a one knob phaser that just the only thing it does is control how fast the phaser is going wow, 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 or wow, 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 you know, and that's enough. That's exciting, and it gets a great sound, and I never have to second guess how it's working. So there is some benefits to simplicity or complexity. Seriously, the first thing to do is just go looking up videos and hear what are these effects, right? I can write in the chat here some of the flavors of effects pedals that I mentioned, right? So we talked about octave pedals, reverb pedals, delay pedals, chorus pedals, phaser, flanger, we didn't get into, overdrive, distortion, fuzz, right? And wah-wah, also a wah-wah pedal. That's a really good starting place. If you know how to use all of those things and what they are, you're ready to be in Andy's 80s hair metal cover band. Right? You don't need all these sounds, but if you want to play 80s hair metal, you should know what distortion and chorus are. Probably those are big parts of that, right? So some of it too is what sounds good with your instrument, what are your aesthetic tastes, and so if you know what a sound is and what it does, then you can decide, is this something I want to invest in? Yes? Or just jump right in, go psychedelic, buy all of them, and see what happens and make new, weird, cool sounds that maybe will be something the world has never heard before. So I'm never going to discourage you from buying more cool pedals.
Rob and I will never tell you not to buy more pedals.
Yeah, you should buy more pedals.
We can tell you... We can also say that reverb.com is a great online marketplace where you can buy used pedals. I realized a while ago that I could, in a very low-risk way, buy a used pedal, and then if I don't like it, I can sell it for the same amount I bought it for because it's still the same amount of used pedal. So whereas if you buy a new pedal from Sweetwater, the second you have it, the value goes down. But if you're buying and selling used pedals, you can do it, I believe, with very little actual risk. Okay, next. Michael is asking, does anyone like the Boss Lop Station? So they have a bunch of loop station, different pedals. So they have the like, I don't know, Boss has probably 10 different ones.
RC3, RC10, RC20, RC20XL, RC30, RC300, RC505. These are all pedals that Boss offers that are all loopers with slightly different features.
Definitely, there are people who love them.
Yeah, I've used them. They work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my biggest problem with that one is, and this is like a really kind of nerdy sounding problem, I don't like the button. I don't like the way the button feels. It's like it is hard for me to push it in time because it has to travel. It's so big. Click. It has to travel really far. Mm-hmm. So for a looping pedal, like I'm looking for something that I call button feel. So like for example, the Boomerang and my MXR clone looper, I know more easily and I can hit the buttons more accurately. There's no question, Michael, that that's a good looping pedal and it works. But for me, I could never seem to get it in time. But Boss within their own pedal universe, the RC300 has great button feel. So, you know, it kind of just depends on the pedal. So
yeah, I have another very nerdy
what I'm talking about with that thing. Okay.
I have a very nerdy beef also with the Boss pedals. Some of them that will play drum loops, while that's useful, For me, it screws up my initial timing as it takes a little, like 5 to 10 milliseconds in the groove. As you hit the button, it calculates what the tempo is and then plays back the drums in time with that. And the very first moment, it throws me off a little bit. So I prefer loopers that don't do extra processing, but it just starts playing back right away. And they're pretty good. And I've toured with the Boss looper for years, but I've upgraded and would recommend the Boomerang for button feel.
I think almost any professional looper started with a Boss, so it's not like it's not a looper and it won't work. I know I did. So,
or the Line 6 DL4. That's another good classic. Yeah. That big green thing. Yeah, same vibe. Nice button feel on that.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Lisa's asking, I bought a cheap Endure clip-on pickup. Will it work? Okay. Yes. You have a pickup and it makes sound and you can get it into a 1/4-inch cable and you can send it through a looper, it'll work. My opinion is like, I think it's more about like what do you want to do? Do you want to sound like a professional concert, or do you want to make your practicing more fun? If you just want to make your practicing more fun, I think it's not that important to spend $500 on the most expensive like for example, I have a $600.
Thank you for saying that.
Pickup. I don't think it sounds very good. So, and a $29 same stick-on thing that Sweetwater sells called the the Dean Markley 3000 costs $29. I have a student who bought it and it works on small kid-size instruments. It sounds amazing. So, it's kind of like wine. You can't taste price. If it sounds good, it is good. If it's cheap and it works, it's good.
If you have a chance, I posted a video on my YouTube channel of me comparing the pickup that I was using on my acoustic instrument with the built-in pickup for my latest acquisition, which is this Glasser 5-string. They have a pickup that's built into it. Glasser sent me this to try out, and I have been trying it. And there's a whole 40-minute review of me comparing what the pickups sound like, and then can I use the gear that I've acquired to get them to both sound good? And it turns out, you can make both pickups sound pretty good, right? So whatever the pickup is, as long as you have something that can sculpt a little bit, you're always going to be able to improve on that tone a little bit. But as Andy said, it depends on your goals, right? The focus should be making music. So we are professional performers who spend a lot of time actively thinking about what is our sound and how are we presenting ourselves and what do people hear and do they love it and will they pay me, right? But if you're in your home, just make sounds, right? If it's inspiring, it's good, right? And that's a big takeaway. This is the other reason I love the guys of That Pedal Show. If you have to wade through the whole, this is guitar and I love guitar and guitar is guitar, right? But their whole point is they're regular dudes. They're not freaky virtuosos. So they're just playing, and you can tell when they like a pedal because they play better. They get more inspired by it, and it helps them to create more interesting music. And so that philosophy is, I think, the overarching best practice. Is if it sounds good enough to get you playing more, it's doing its job at the price point that you've paid for it, right?
Yeah. I'm being asked to repeat the $29 pickup that sounds good. It's called the Dean Markley 3000, and Sweetwater sells 2 different versions of it. One that goes, I can't remember. One has an attached cable and one doesn't. It's basically attaches to your violin via poster board putty, and which is the same thing that. No, that's the same thing the $600 shirtlers do.
Okay. Very good.
But for $570 less, I think it sounds at least as good or better.
Yeah, I've used the pickup you're talking about, the Shirtler Dyne V. I use the Stat V, and the Stat V sounds not like the real instrument, but pretty good, and I like it. And it has a pickup, and it fixes the impedance stuff. There's a little box that comes with it. It just sounds pretty good right off the jump. And everything else is gravy from there. But yeah, that Dyne V, I keep it in my case, and I literally haven't used it in years. It's a backup only because it's
so funky in the mids. It just sounds like the violin is put through, it's got a cold and it's very filtered.
which is
And it feeds back pretty easily on a really loud stage.
it's like a microphone that you've puttied to your instrument. It's just not that good. So yeah.
That said, Casey Dreesen uses one of those and what's that clip-on microphone? The
DPA?
DPA.
Yeah.
Uses the combination of the DPA and the Schertler to combine the microphone and the pickup sounds. And if you haven't heard Casey Dreesen loop, he's got a full album called The Singularity. And if you're a violin person who loops and you haven't heard this album, I would highly recommend you go listen to it. I'm also posting in the chat this website that I built to answer questions like one time or like make it easier for me to answer. These are my generalized gear recommendations in one place. Robin is mentioning the one spot, a power cable. It is true that wonky power can make wonky sound. So depending on what pedals you have, sometimes it's nice to have a really good power supply situation. Those of you who have bought Tonebone piezo pre's based on my recommendation, it uses a 15-volt input, which pretty much makes it impossible to use almost any power brick source other than ones made by this company called Hx or the Eventide Power Max.
Yep, Hx is
Rob
great.
is posting a YouTube video that you should probably see.
I just posted a video. This is the guys from That Pedal Show talking about the things that you need when you're powering your pedals. They did a whole hour-long video about the fanciest ways and the best and reliable ways to do it. Really, really detailed. They talk about VCP, VCPI, right? Which is voltage, current, polarity, and isolation. Those are the 4 factors you need to know about. Voltage is how many volts the pedal needs. Too many, and it will be a smoking dumpster fire. You will set your pedal on fire and it will break. Current is how much current the pedal draws, right? There are things called the daisy chain that you can plug in 5 or 6 pedals all to one power outlet. The problem is if your pedals will draw more current than can be, like if you've got some really, exactly, right? So if you're using simple analog chorus, no problem. Overdrive pedal takes like 7 milliamps, right? But a fancy reverb pedal might take 500 milliamps, and all of a sudden that one power outlet is no longer distributing the right amount of current to the pedals. So you might end up with noise, right? Isolation is the 4th one of those, and this daisy chain is the opposite of isolated. It is all of them sharing one dirty stream. So if you're downstream of the noisy pedal, you're going to end up with noise coming through. So better to have a dedicated adapter for each pedal or run them on batteries is the most isolated you can possibly get. However, there are a variety of solutions. The ones that Andy mentions, the one by Hx, the Eventide Power Max. Strymon makes a really great set of power supplies. The Zumas are very clean and cheap, or not cheap, but it's clean and good power and lots of high current. Polarity is the last thing. Sometimes they're either center positive or center negative. And it will say on the pedal, if you plug in the one that's backwards, you may blow up your pedal. So just make sure that you've got the polarity matched.
This can be like a very long and confusing internet rabbit hole. So this especially, I think, is one of the best things to use a Sweetwater sales engineer to work with to make sure that you're buying a thing that's not going to blow up your pedals, that's going to sound good.
Right.
It's nice to have some help on this question.
Yeah.
Even if you think you know the right thing from having looked at the internet, like
We've all done it. We've all plugged in the wrong thing to the wrong thing, right? Do check out the That Pedal Show episode on this, because it goes into exquisite detail, and it's an hour long, but you'll learn so much from watching these guys. I can't tell you how many of their episodes I have watched and how much I've learned from just that one YouTube channel. You just have to get past the point that it's all talking about guitarists, right? Fiddlers can learn a lot from that channel of guitar stuff.
Okay, so we've reached 6:10, and I personally I don't have to run it. I know Rob has to run pretty soon, so
I thought I did. I had a lesson to teach at 8:15, but my student canceled. So let's talk.
Okay, there you go. I just want to throw in just real quick that like if most of you probably know by now, but I just want to plug our 2-week looping masterclass that we're doing, where we show you not just like we're hoping that this event is going to help you plug in your gear so that you can show up on Monday to our looping masterclass, and we're going to tell you to start looping, and the stuff will work. Now, if you want to come to the looping masterclass and you still have gear questions, please get in contact with us, and we'll make sure that you're happy before then. It is also true that you can do most of the things we're asking using a phone and the Acapella app to multi-track, or an interface in a computer. But we think that looping pedals are the best things ever, and I've gone on the record in public saying this. Looping pedals are the best thing in the universe for practicing, for composing, for working out arrangements, and for performing as a solo violin artist. So hopefully, if you're interested, many of you I know are already signed up, but just give this loopmethod.com a look, and we'd love to hang out for 2 weeks and get super nerdy and go super deep and kind of answer, how do you plug into the matrix to make chords make sense? We think that loopers can actually help make sense of like just like what is music and what's going on.
Exactly. As soon as you're plugged in, as soon as you've got a rig that is making sound, you are ready for this class, right? If this hopefully we talked a lot about the fancy frills and the extra stuff and how to make your sound really lovely, right? But Andy said something very important at the beginning of this Zoom call, which is that every part of the chain makes a difference on your overall sound. The most important part of the chain is you. So knowing what to play and having the desire to grow and practice and work at it is going to make the biggest impact, right? No matter what gear you have, if it sits there unused, not a thing. It doesn't sound like this. This doesn't sound like anything, right? It's only when
just listen. Just listen to the sustain. Just listen. Well, I don't hear it. Well, you would if it were played.
Oh, great Spinal Tap reference there. Yes, indeed. Any other questions? Oh, we've got another person entering the waiting room. Admit.
No question is too stupid.
Yes.
This is the purpose of this is to unconfuse you.
Right.
Because we have wasted lots of time and money being confused ourselves.
I asked a quick question in chat, and it was just in that chain of chords. Mm-hmm. Is there an end that you should start with? Like, should you start with the plug that's closest to the outlet, or should you start with when you have a chain like that, do you start from the end? Do you know what I'm saying?
You're talking about your power supply daisy chain cord?
Yeah, the daisy chain.
Multiple pedals? Yes. Order probably won't matter for that. Yeah, okay. I think any of those should distribute the same amount of current to all of the pedals, however you have them spread out. And the pedal will only draw as much current as it needs, which hopefully the sum total of the pedals are drawing less than the total output of whatever the daisy chain is providing, right?
Hopefully, I only have 3, so hopefully it'll all work out.
Okay, and the chorus pedal is probably very low current draw. Usually analog gear draws less current than one of the fancy digital things that's doing a lot of processing and needs more juice to do that digital processing. Yes? Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who's confused? Who feels good? Wait. Yeah, who feels good? Nice.
All right. Yeah, more questions. Briefly, a note on Acapella, right? I got a note saying, what the Acapella app looks good, but which is the best app to play a part and record and video at the same time, right? So these are, make some sparkles if you've tried the Acapella app. Yeah. Okay. So if you have not tried this app, this is a way that you can record yourself and then playing that back, record another layer, and then playing that back, record another layer, which is similar to the task that we've set out to do with the looper pedal, right? The only major difference with this is, well, there's two. One, it's recording video as well. So if you want to make a video and you want to have loops of yourself, multiple use, Acapella is a way to do that where a looper pedal won't help at all, right? So that's an advantage of Acapella. The downside is it's asynchronous, right? You record the thing, then you have to listen back and say, yes, I approve this clip. Okay, let's plug in the next one, get ready. Okay, oh, I didn't like that take. Let me try again. Okay, here we go, right? With the looper pedal, it's instantaneous. You just press the button, play a thing. Press the button, it's playing back with you, and then you can immediately start layering. So for me, I tend to use a looper pedal where I want something that's spontaneous and much faster, right? Acapella is very useful if you're trying to create a video for later. If you want to do something that is a video for you to upload at a later time and you're playing all the parts or doing a full string quartet yourself or something like that, you could do that in Acapella. You could also just use iMovie or whatever other video editing software you have. Record videos and figure out somehow in that software how to do picture-in-picture, right? I'm on a Mac computer and it has iMovie for free. You can do picture-in-picture, and so you can have two things at once, right? Fancier editing softwares like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro, you can do much more sophisticated things. If you ever seen like one of those, I don't know if you guys watched the show Schitt's Creek, they put out a special graduation message that Mariah Carey made a cameo in, which is very, oh my gosh, Mariah Carey. And it's them on a Zoom call, and it's definitely not actually a Zoom call. They filmed and then had somebody in editing stitch that together to look like it was all synced up. Now, how you sync that up in video editing software is kind of up to you. There's a lot of different ways to do it. It could be as complex as you want. For me, making audio in real time, performing live, looper pedal, done, the end, right? In terms of how that relates to this class, some of the things that Andy and I are going to talk about are how do you layer yourself? What layers should you make? So that's why we're saying Acapella could be used for this class, is because we're just talking about fundamental principles of arranging, of chords, of harmony, and where do those things overlap? And what happens if there's 2 U's or 3 U's or 4 U's? So in that sense, you could use Acapella or any other recording software to get at some of those concepts, but you won't be able to do them in real time like you would with a looper pedal. Yeah. Now we're all muted because even Andy's muted. But Andy's got his fiddle. Are you gonna play
just thinking maybe I would play a loop and you would play a loop.
Sure. I'd love it. Hit it.
I don't know if this is loud. It kind of seems loud. So one of the things that's really great for this is like practicing keys that are really not as comfortable for us. So like D flat is a key that for me is less comfortable than like G and D. But the looping pedal lets me make it fun. You can just like sucking at it and be like Like, you gotta hear yourself
Ah,
sucking
yes.
your own personal.
The Sweet Sounds of Ornette Coleman. I remember that song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, this, your practice space with the looping pedal is where you should be practicing D flat sucking, not on stage, right? Because when they look at this, you to take your solo and you're on a bluegrass stage and it's in the key of B and the 5 chord is F sharp major. If you haven't spent time in your house practicing with your F sharp major grooves, God help you. You know, so take your tunes in the key of D, like your Whiskey Before Breakfast, and make them D flat. You'll become a better whole musician.
Bravo.
All right, Rob, your turn. Thank you, guys.
Okay. So one of the things that I really like to do with the looper is for writing melodies, right? If I want to have some gorgeous lyrical thing, right, I'm going to put on all my time-based effects, my reverbs, my delays, and give myself a big, expansive canvas to play on. Pick a key. Somebody give me a key in the chat. Give me a chord to play on. Somebody type a chord, and I'm going to try and use that key. F sharp. Handy. All right, so let's do it. Let's make some F sharp drone. And then from there, I'm going to start to play stuff over that drone. And I added a 7 just because it's fun. Ta-da! F sharp thing. It might have been
Yay.
a raga. It might have been rag party, but or possibly rag todi. I get my ragas mixed up, but it was sometimes major, sometimes minor, flat 7 the whole time. I don't know what rag that is. It sounded like fun to me. Yeah.
It occurs to me that one of the best things about using effect pedals with our looping strategies is that, one, we might find ourselves playing things that we wouldn't normally have played just on our acoustic violins by themselves, and two, if you're trying to build your kind of like one man or one woman or one whoever band situation, when each layer of your loop is a different sound, it sounds more like a band than like, oh, check out 7 violins. So I'm hoping that if you come and see an Andy Reiner looping concert, you're not going to be like, oh, it's 7 violins. You're going to be like, wow, it sounds like a band. So effects help me get there. I can't do that with just my acoustic violin and a looper. But the concepts we're talking about, I think, apply no matter what. So I don't know, the first 7 years I had any pedals with just a preamp and an octave pedal and a looper, and that really held my attention. I was like, oh, I don't want more pedals. I see all these guitar players being played by their pedals. They're not playing them. They're just wanking around. But then I joined a jam band, and I was like, oh, why should guitar players have all the fun? I also like fun.
Right. It's nice to have an effect to change the flavor a little bit. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I say pedals that are inspiring sounds, that take you to a different place. Violin, for my money, always sounds good with reverb and delay. Just big echoey wash. We love it. Now, if you want to put those effects on and play a fiddle tune, it's going to be a mess, and no one will be able to dance to it. So that would be an inappropriate time to use big, echoey, washy mess.
Play something we can dance to.
Hey, play something I like. Have you ever get that one at a gig?
More Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We've all heard them all.
Yep. Yeah. Other questions? Anybody else got more questions?
Questions. We're here. Yeah. Questions.
Charmin asked in the chat, which effects did I use? I commented I used the delay pedal and a reverb. If you wanted the specific ones that I was using, I keep doing that. I keep clicking on the wrong thing. I was using this one, the Chase Bliss Thermae, and the Earthquaker Devices Avalanche Run. These are very customized, fancy ones. I love the Thermae so much. It is my favorite pedal ever. It is $500 for a delay pedal, which is absurd, but I bought it because I love it so much. If you want me to sell you on why that pedal's the best ever, I will talk about it all day, but maybe that's overkill. Freebird, oh boy. Yeah, that's I've heard that one too. Yeah, that's when you flip off the audience and go, no charge. That's a free bird. What do you say?
Go for it, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to ask, just like the boomerang, for instance, does that have like different loop sections? You know, you can do like loop A and loop B and that sort of thing. Yes. It does?
Yes. Yeah. Boomerang is the bee's knees. It's the one that I recommend to everybody.
Yeah.
It's the top.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want that thing, that's the thing you want.
Yeah.
You can. So the two most basic ways that you can be using that. Oh, see, my delay is usually turned on too because it's just so nice. You can make So here's just a basic backing sound that was a very short loop, but with the boomerang, I can make a longer form, like. I hit it badly, so it waited until it came back in.
So the second loop is now multiples of that first short loop.
Yeah.
Right? Here's my screen. I've also got a boomerang here, and I can show you what's going on in a little more close-up view if you see it. So the what Andy's doing is a mode on the boomerang called Serial Sync. Serial Sync. That's looping loop 3 as the short loop. That's now my master loop, and loops 1 and 2 are going to be multiples of that. So I can have one loop that's just the same length as that. Or I can have another that's longer. It's called serial because it changes from one to the other in series. But they are both synced to the loop, the master loop, right? Love me some boomerang. It can do all the things. Yeah.
Or show them left to right.
Left to
right? Verse, chorus, bridge. Yeah.
What? Say that again. What?
You know, I have no idea how these.
Oh.
What the names?
Yeah. Just serial mode, using all three of them not synchronized. You can just use them as 3 independent loops. Yes. Okay, I'll show that in a second.
I can do it, but I've realized it's better with your view.
Pedal cam. Okay, so I'm going to clear those. I'm going to get rid of all the loops, right? Now, the way that it got into that mode was I started with this one. And if you start with loop 3 on this pedal, this is an idiosyncrasy of this pedal specifically, right? We're now in serial sync mode. Let me clear that. And it doesn't, you see how these are no longer clear? If I start with one of the other two, it's just going to be in serial mode. now these are three completely independent loops. This one's not related to that one at all. Right? Completely different tempi. And this one is no longer a master because you're in serial mode, so it's just going to treat it as a third independent loop. Right? So that's useful too, potentially. I use that less than when I have one short drum loop and then a verse and a chorus tends to be how I might use this, right? But those are both options. You can also switch it to be, if you press this little tiny button, whee, now you've got two more modes on here. You can do sync and free. So I can have this one. So now, both of these are synced again, but you can have all three on at once. That's really useful too. And last but not least, if I start in this side, if I just have them all. So now all three of these are completely independent. I don't like any of them though because they're not synchronized and they won't jump from one to the next right when it ends. So you have there it's completely free. That's free mode. So this pedal has 4 different modes of operation, and I tend to use just one or maybe 2 depending, right? But that's the reason why I personally prefer the Boomerang. It's just got so many different ways to use it, and it always works. This thing's built like a tank. I've had it for years. I've toured in like nationally with it. It's always worked. It's always worked. It's never failed me. Fingers crossed. As soon as I say this, of course, it'll go down because that's Murphy's Law of electronics. But that's sort of I consider the Boomerang my highest level. It's the one to beat. Right? I think it's the best available. There's 2 that I'm seriously considering as contenders otherwise. The Boss RC300 or RC505 are both really fancy. There's one that I've seen Reggie Watts using, but it's more because he's a singer and he can use his hands more easily. So for that, that's not applicable to me. The Eros I've tried and it worked really well, but I don't know how the build quality stands up to the Boomerang. So for these reasons and more, several years ago, I recommended to Andy, you should buy a Boomerang. And he did, and he's never looked back. And you might want that too.
Well, because I had the Pigtronics Infinity Looper because it claimed to do the things that I wanted it to do, but in practice, it actually kind of didn't work very well for me. And when I got in touch with the company, they said, "Oh, you're doing different things than anyone uses this pedal for. It shouldn't be able to do that. No, sorry, it can't do that." Like really simple kind of basic stuff that the Boomerang excels at. So I sold it and haven't looked back.
Yeah.
That said, Rob, about the RC505.
Go ahead.
Joy just bought it, and she's gonna use because she hates bending down while holding the cello to adjust stuff, and it's got a foot pedal that you can do externally. So she's about to do the combination foot and with the twiddly knob thing. So that's not necessarily the craziest idea.
I like it. Similarly, the blooper pedal is all about the twiddling of knobs, right? Let me jump back to pedal cam here and zoom out again. There's my blooper, right? I can send audio over here now. Let's see if this will work, right? So that's fun. But the whole point of it is you're destroying the loop by manipulating the knobs and tweaking the sounds of the loop in playback, right? So that's another kind of looping that we haven't really talked about so much yet. Most of what this workshop is geared for, and most of how Andy and I use the loops, is for live performance where you are layering yourself in time with rhythm and harmony, sort of substituting for the rest of the band is the shortest hand way I can say that. Yeah. So that looping thing I was doing there is a much more experimental approach to using a looper pedal over and over again. Does that make sense? Cool. All right.
Looks like there's a bunch of different versions of the boomerang.
Of the boomerang? Yeah, the late. It's because it's the oldest pedal. The boomerang's been out since like 1990. it's the same. So at this point, Boomerang 3 is their latest offering. It's been the latest offering since maybe 2004. It's really old. Like it's surprisingly old and still is the best. And they almost were going out of business because their pedals didn't break, so nobody was buying new ones. They just kept working, so they weren't selling any, which I think is a testament to their build quality. But if you could argue that the fidelity of the sound is possibly a little better on one of the newer offerings like the TC Ditto. My friend Okori Johnson in Atlanta, he goes under the alias OK Cello. If you look him up, he uses the Ditto with a microphone and a preamp and all of that because he wants the most natural acoustic sound for his cello for live performance that he can get. And he, after doing extensive research, settled on the Ditto because he said it had the highest bitrate conversion. It was just the best quality sounding looper for the playback of the loops. I'm not bothered at all by the sound of the boomerang. You just heard it through the microphone of this computer through my amp over there. So there's already a couple other factors at play here, right? So the whole signal chain matters. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't have the that when I used to have a Boss One, I'd be playing through it and it caused what I would call tone suck. It makes your tone suck. Which sucks when you don't always want to use it for a whole gig and then you have it on stage so you can use it sometimes but the whole time your sound is less good. All right. Chris, yeah.
I just wanted to mention, just a comment. I just wanted to mention something like this one, for instance. It has a problem which you might have come across on other loopers. So you record your loop, and then you stop the loop, and you have to wait until it plays the loop before you add the loop. I just thought I'd mention that because that's kind of a drawback, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, just a warning with this one. It's a good looper, but it does that. So there are some others that are like that too.
So this is a problem that we'll be discussing at length in our 2-week class, and that is the idea of the seam and overdubs. The seam is my term for the start and end point of the loop where they meet, right? And overdubbing is then when you start to add on top of that, right? Some loopers, you can go straight seamlessly into overdubbing immediately. Some of them you even can control this and turn it off. I discovered, talking with a friend who had a Ditto X2, that there's actually an internal setting on the Ditto X2. You can change that. That's the 2-pedal one. I don't know if that's true on the 1-pedal one. Maybe worth looking in the manual to see if there's an internal dip switch. You're shaking your head like you've done this and no. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So if you prefer to go straight into layering the next recording layer, you might consider something like the Ditto X2. Again, Boomerang has discovered.
That's why I bought this clone looper because it's tiny and it's not a set situation how you close the loop. So the cool thing is you start recording with this button, and if you push this button to close your loop, you go direct to overdubbing. But if you push this button to close your loop, you go straight to playing over it. And I just, I have my Boomerang setup. I just gave them all my money. I bought the sidecar and the Holy Roller. So it's really, really big. So I wanted something that was like really small. And that particular factor of that choice, without having to pre-program what I was going to do next, is why I ended up with this. That said, this knob is also a button. And so if you're, yes, this is a button. This knob is a button. and the way that this button functions, like this knob has, it's your volume, or it's the first step of a two-step process to erase your loop, or it turns it into half speed or reverse. So it's not very foolproof if you use that button incorrectly. But
Chris, I see you holding up the 2-button Ditto version.
Yeah, this is the one I was talking about earlier that does the syncing with the beat, but you can turn that off. But it does have this where you can switch the record dub play, record play dub between.
Oh, nice. So they took the internal dip switch on the one that I know Robin has, and they've made it external on that model.
So they've got a few models, and there's the other one that's not this, the one that's like this, that doesn't have the beat sync. It has that as well. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'll just briefly show, because I know there's at least one other person on this call who just recently got or is about to get a Boomerang. So a brief mention. If you want to do this on Boomerang, here's the way to do it. I'll use serial mode. So that's just a regular loop. If I wanted to, let's do it with a bow so it's more obvious, right? Right? You can hear where the gap is, where the seam happens, right? So if I do it this way, if I start recording, but I hold down the bonus button, see how I have it set to go stack? That'll help to smear it a little bit. See how it's more smudged? So you can start overdubbing right away while you're recording the loop. You have to remember while it's starting that first recording to override its playback right away and start overdubbing right away. So now it's stacking, which is Boomerang's word for overdub. They use the word stack for some reason. Okay. So that's how you do either or on a Boomerang.
We won't hold it against them. Heather has a question, and I'm trying to, I guess I'm not 100% sure if I understand your question correctly, because you asked, does it save the loops? And then you asked about recording stuff. So like if you're using it to experiment with chords and harmonies, then you need something else to record it. I guess I'm not exactly sure what you're trying to ask. Could you maybe use your voice and clarify your question, or just even talk a little bit about what your question is?
Andy, I think that was my question you were referring to.
Oh, sorry, Sharman. Yeah. Whoops. Oh, yeah.
So in the chat, you know, we were going through the Boomerang, and then it says, you said it doesn't save all the loops. It's all about the live performance. Well, I'm assuming in the class, we're going to be learning about how to use this to figure out chords and harmonies for our pieces. But it doesn't save the loops that we make anyway. So if we want to be able to keep this and try it again, then what Rob is saying is you have to use your phone to record.
Yeah, I'll jump in here.
Yeah, yes, but.
Yes, but.
Okay,
yeah, okay.
Yes, but.
We're
okay, I
thinking
love
the same,
yes, but.
We're the same person again. So here's the thing. If you're practicing, you don't just practice one time, right?
Right.
The practice of making a loop successfully and getting the timing right and stepping on the button and getting your groove and your time feel and quickly reproducing those chords is something that is worth practicing from scratch over and over again. So we advocate for loopers that don't save the file for later, right? There are some loopers that you can buy that if you create a loop in your loop that you're like, damn, this is awesome. I want to save that sound for later and maybe pull it back up and even like use it as a backing track for a song later in a performance. It sounds so good. I just want to hit play and it's there again. I want to be able to turn the power off and still come back to it when I. You can buy loopers that do that. We personally don't do that, and the reason is we'd rather recreate it each time. It's more satisfying and more rewarding, and feels like we've really actually learned something and internalized the concept and are making the music as opposed to playing karaoke, right? Is that fair to say, Andy? Yeah. So
Yeah, absolutely. But it is true that if you're kind of experimenting and you want to save it, and you feel like you would want to save ideas that you were coming up with, and that seems important to you, it might be good to get a looper with the opportunity to save the loops. If that sounds like a better way to do it, then like, because what I just do is record a voice memo on my phone, so I can remember kind of what I did.
Yeah, get the general gist of it.
If you want to save the exact loop, there are loopers that will do that.
Right.
I'm more interested in if something works. It's like, oh, I like that, and I want to be able to capture it. And I'm old, my memory's crappy, and it's like, yeah, tomorrow I'm going to remember this. No way.
Yeah, I can relate to that, and I don't identify as old. I do identify as having a crappy memory. I tell people I have Swiss cheese holes in my brain at this point. I just don't remember stuff. So two answers to that. Again, the voice memo way is probably the fastest and simplest. You just open up your phone, press the record button, and you're getting a very low fidelity remembering of how it goes, right? If you're just playing back the loop, you won't remember the order in which you stacked it necessarily if you listen back tomorrow, regardless of the method of saving the information. If you saved it as a voice memo, cool, sounds cool. How did I do that again? If you saved it as a loop that's preset as a saved MP3 file and you upload that to your computer, it's still the whole loop, and you're just saving the loop. You're not hearing the whole performance and remembering what order you layered them in. So the best way is actually to turn on some other device and record the process the whole way through. You could even just leave your phone running during your practice session and just record you layering the loop. That's going to give you more information than saving the loop itself. It won't sound as hi-fi. You can also go into a recording studio and have audio equipment and fancy microphones and multi-track yourself in a DAW and go the studio route, right? That's what we do when we're so convinced we have the best idea that it's worth recording and committing to tape. But for me, for my money, just use your phone. It's super straightforward, and then you're getting the benefits of both.
That answers the question. Yep. Were you going to add anything, Andy?
No, but there's kind of a similar related question that came to me in a private message. So I was going to pivot to that question, which seems related, which is, does the Boss ME80 record the loop? So let's talk real quick about the limitations of the Boss ME80 looper. The Boss ME80 looper is the most basic possible looper that you could ever have. So I would say the same answer to what Rob says, which is if you want to remember what you did, record it on your phone or another recording device. The Boss ME80 is kind of bizarre in that there's no stop function. There's no difference between stop and erase. So you start your loop, you record whatever you want on it, you play whatever you want on it, you do your song. When you double tap, because this is a one button looper but built into a multi-track thing, when you double tap to stop, it is gone forever. There is no way to save it. You will never hear it ever again. So I kind of like that it has one in it. So like I'm personally going to put it across the street in this hair salon that we're renovating, so I can like get out of my house and play out of a PA with no one to hear it and just have a basic looper to make it happen. And, I'll be recording on my phone if I like it. The button feel is great. The sound quality is great, but it's not going to do anything for you other than record, layer, and play over it. That's it. And then you stop it, it's gone forever. You can't even stop it and press play again. It's gone.
Yeah. Just a reminder for why that is.
Oh, this is what I was going to say. I finally remembered. Think of a looper as an Etch-a-Sketch, okay? You're building a piece of art. You're making a thing that's cool. You're like, wow, look at this beautiful thing. And then you shake it up and you have a blank slate again. Looping pedals are kind of like that.
I love it. I love it so much. Yeah. The limitation is its own reward, right? It's that there's a temporality to it and a loss of permanence that I think is really satisfying. You know, you can quickly make something and build up a whole layer of noise, and if you don't like it, poof, it's gone. And if you do like it,
Yeah.
well, then you really need to remember how you made it, right? And that's the practice. That's part of what we're building here is understanding, not just layering layers and going, oh, that one sounds cool. That is an approach. You can do that. But knowing the why and the how behind it is much more satisfying to me, right? And you can apply those same why and how principles when you get to play music with humans again, right? I mean, if you have a band or an ensemble, if you're arranging from an arranger's perspective now in quarantine and learning how to, well, how do I stack 3 melodies together and make them sound good in a harmony? Well, when you get together with your triple fiddle band later, you can do that, right? So it's very helpful to understand the chords and the harmonic stuff. There are also some limitations to the structure of a looper. It makes a big circle, and you're stuck in that size circle. Whatever looper you have, the fanciest one you have, you're going to play the same thing over and over and over again. So if you ever want to pivot and do a different thing, that's tricky to do. You could buy a fancy looper pedal like Andy and I have that lets you have multiple different sized circles, but still, that is fundamentally the structure of how it goes, right? So if you're not playing circly based music, a looper won't do that. If you're playing, you know, Shostakovich string quartet, you can't use a looper to do that kind of motivic development and changes and pivots and non-circle shaped music. But we're interested in the study of circle shaped music. Yes? Songs that have a loop. Fiddle tunes are in a cycle. Jazz standards are in a cycle. Improvisation can be in a cycle.
12-bar blues.
Jinx.
Yeah.
If you want to make a beat for a rapper to rap over, it's usually a cycle. And then that cycle loops and you can rap over it, right? All of these things, this is the basis of most of the music I play nowadays, is something that is roughly circle based. And if I can't do that, well, then I'll just play guitar, I guess. Right? I mean, you know, that's why I picked up guitar next. Is some things that I can't do with the looper. But it's only after I exhausted all the cycle things. And when I go on tour, I tour with a violin and a looper pedal. I'm like, that's it. that's the whole setup. And the slightly fancier things like the preamp and EQ and delay and reverb and a step octave, because I like the sounds. But this is my travel board right now. It's just this. Ta-da! I've got looper in here and some other effects. One overdrive sound for a boost. And this is a little mixer that lets me plug in a vocal mic and a thing. This is the smallest mixer that I think is on the market. It's designed as a stomp box. It's the Elite Acoustics EAE Stomp Mix 4. It's incredibly tiny, and you can plug in a mic and a violin to it. It has reverb, it has EQ. It's not that expensive. That is actually a potentially really good mixer. It is, however, particular to my needs, and I need something that will fit on a pedal board and go in my backpack, right? All of the other things that everybody else on the call had is like a small 4-channel mixer that you could use to run the sound on a stage if you own a coffee shop and you want to have an open mic and have a bunch of people plug in. You know, that's what you buy. Is you buy a mixer, right? So, yeah. Anyway, point of that is to say there's a lot of value in just using circles in your music and practicing that and studying the structure and the why. And then you can get fancy and add sprinkles and fairy dust and chorus pedals and all the other stuff. If it's inspiring and it makes you practice more and learn and understand the deep structure of music more. Yeah? Okay.
Sharman wants to know if you can type the touring mixer that you use into the chat.
Yes, it is the EAE Stomp Mix 4. And I met these guys at the NAMM show this January. This product only came out this January. And I'm always looking for the tiniest mixer with the most power.
Charlie.
It's pretty good. Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. If you have to go, thanks. I appreciate all the people who are saying, yes, Chris, I do have 2 Zoyas. Yeah, because I love it so much. And it's super customizable, and I've literally got entire notebooks dedicated to the Empress Zoya. I love that pedal. It's just all kinds of stuff. Yeah, yeah. I've talked
There's
at least
also-
one person into buying the Zoya now.
The jam band that I'm in is called Whitewater Ramble, and the band leader said that if you don't have a backup for every single pedal on your board, you're crazy. And this guy carries around a separate pedal board so that if anything breaks down at the gig when you're on the road, you're totally fine. And I looked down at my board and I'm like, well, I can't afford to buy a second one of everything, which is, again,
I can't
why
either,
ended
but
up
I
with
did.
this. Well, you know, some people have alcohol problems. Some people have
I have
all
gas.
kinds of problems.
Yeah.
And some people have instrument problems. My dad has MAS, mandolin acquisition syndrome. I see, Chris, you might also have some kind of instrument acquisition syndrome. And
I need an intervention.
yeah, and but
Just
but
mail
we're the
them
wrong
here.
people.
Yeah,
We're-
I'll take
we're
them
not-
off your hands.
we're not gonna-
There's wall space.
Rob and
See?
I are we're not going to tell you to not buy more gear. We're just not going to do it. So as long as you can keep food on the table, we think there's no such thing as too many pedals.
Right. And they all work slightly differently. You can see behind me, maybe, there's a stack of 4 more overdrives on that drum, because I was working on a project where I wasn't sure what the right tone was for the recording project. And so I have a library of pedals at this point, and I've tried all of them and have a flavor that I prefer for different specific applications. But it's kind of like cooking with spices, yes? Each pedal is a spice that you can cook with, and depending on the situation in the dish, you might want a different spice, right? But if you don't understand salt, fat, acid, heat, then, you know, you're just gonna throw random spices and it's gonna be like a mush, right? You have to understand the principles of cooking a good dish first and foremost, and then buy a bunch of gear, right? However, the first thing is to start with the basic spices and learn how to use the things that are essential to every kitchen: salt and pepper, olive oil, garlic, you know, all those staples. And then you decide how much of the Szechuan chili oil you want to add, or how much teriyaki, or how much bay leaves, or et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
That's why we now have 25 kinds of hot sauce and like 15 kinds of pepper flakes and powders. It's very
There's a
important
correlation.
to have a range of spiciness available. Yeah. Okay. Heather's hungry. I think we've made it to the end of the second hour, so we feel pretty good. And now there's a cat.
Yay! Cat time is
Yay,
always
cat
time. Yeah. I'll just add, if anybody has other additional gear questions, feel free to message me or Andy. Many of you are already our patrons on Patreon. That's a really good place to message us. Right? That we get a little ping and we can just write you right back on Patreon. That's a good way to do it. And most people who are signing up for this workshop have one or both of those, so that's an easy place where you can definitely reach us. But all the social media channels, you can email me, you can email Andy. And there's a Facebook group for the Looping Masterclass. So if you've signed up, you'll be in that and you can ask these questions to the community at large.
That and while we're on Facebook groups, the Electric String Players Facebook group, I think, is just an incredible resource to ask. If you ask a question in Electric String Players, 10 people will answer with 10 different answers, and they might all be right answers. So that's how the internet works, right?
I bought this one and I liked it, and it's really good, and you should buy it too. Well, I like this one and I bought it and I liked it. Okay. Well, I bought them both just to be sure. There's also a Facebook group called Pedal Boards of Doom.
Oh yeah.
This is a bunch of guitarists for the most part, which, you know, again, take that with a grain of salt. Andy and I both like to rag on guitarists a little bit, but it's worth remembering that the first ever fuzz pedals and all those effects were designed first for guitar. So there is a history in terms of understanding pedals. I think you need a rudimentary understanding of how electric guitar works to really understand what electric violin is.
Hey, some of my best friends are guitarists.
Oh yeah. Bless their hearts.
And violists.
Oh yeah. Okay. Any last questions? Otherwise, we're signing off here. Groovy. All right. Thank you all so much. Big sparkle waves. You rock. I'm very excited for Monday. I'm hoping to get my pedal board direct into Zoom by Monday. Thanks for your patience with that, everybody, and happy gear purchasing.
Take advantage of that free 2-day shipping, eh?
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. Okay. Bye. Good night.
Bye.